The stereotype of chiropractic is that we treat back pain, but many people have really no idea how we go about it, or they get their ideas from TikTok or YouTube, which are usually overly fabricated entertainment things that sometimes even I look at and I go, that isn't real. That isn't really what we do. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you exactly the real true details of how I go about helping people with back pain. And it's not so simple because everybody has a different type of back pain. There's a number of conditions that can be causing back pain, ranging from ligament injuries, tendon injuries, muscle injuries, joint injuries, disc injuries, as well as other systemic problems that can refer pain to the back. So it's not as simple as do these 3 exercises and it cures all back pain, because you'll see that a lot on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, that you do this one exercise and it magically cures back pain, but back pain really can be complex. I've been a chiropractor for over 28 years, and every patient that comes in is a kind of a new book to read and to figure out what the problems are. But I have some basic principles that I'm going to share with you that may be able to help you figure out your own back pain, as well as let you know what I do here in Camarillo. So number 1, the first thing that I do when, aside from diagnosing the condition and figuring out all the orthopedic tests and making sure it's not a medical problem that needs attention with something else, is you always want to figure out what are the movement patterns that are potentially causing the person to perpetuate their back pain. Now, 9 out of 10 times a patient comes in and has back pain, and I ask them, how long have you had it? And they go, years. And I go, what caused it? And they go, I don't know, I don't do anything. And that's usually not true. If I were to be able to watch them, and I do, I observe very carefully how they get up out of a chair. I have them go through ranges of motion, such as bending forward, bending back, bending to the side. And these are very important movements because we do these all day. It's amazing how many times you bend forward to pick up something. You bend forward to brush your teeth and spit. You bend forward to put your socks on. You put your shoes on. Maybe you make your bed. Maybe you clean stuff off the ground. Maybe you pick up after your kids. You're doing dishes. You're putting dishes in the dishwasher. You're getting in and out of a car. These movements, if done improperly, can aggravate a tendon or a muscle or a joint. Very similar to as if I took a sharp fingernail and just scratched my arm, and I did that 10 times, not a big deal, but you do it 1,000 times a day over a period of years, and that skin becomes very, very sensitive and painful. That's exactly what happens with most people. So by observing how they move, we can help people understand that certain movements will cause problems. I'll give you a perfect example. Disc herniations. Disc herniations are a very common thing that I see in my office. And holy cow, do people cause these themselves. It's not funny, but if I ask a patient, bend down, touch your toes, they usually will do the exact motion that's bad for the disc, which is by rounding their spine and not hinging at the hips. Of course, as I'm doing a video, the ambulance is running down the street. It's the fire department. And yeah, they're picking up another patient, right? So if I observe how a patient moves and we figure out what movements are actually causing their pain, we can teach them how to move differently. And right there and then, that's a big one. I'm gonna say that's 60% of most of the benefit when they come to a chiropractor of what I'm able to do. Is I'm knowledgeable about what movements hurt a muscle, what movements hurt a disc, what movements hurt a ligament. And by figuring out what the problem is and then watching you move, we can coach you through how to get in and out of a car, how to bend forward to brush your teeth and spit, all these things. And most people, quite frankly, don't want to hear this, but it's true, is a lot of times we're causing our own back pain. And if you can figure out what that is, sometimes you need some expert help. And a lot of times, oh, I know how to get out of a chair. No, you don't, because I'm watching you and you're doing it. It's aggravating the disc. So you can coach people in that regard, and that's a big one. The second thing that we do is we improve the range of motion of the individual joints and the muscles to allow that range of motion. And usually when I do this, I'm using some type of manual treatment, like an adjustment or some type of myofascial movement pattern treatment with my hands. I sometimes will use my knuckles, my elbows, my palm here, my thumb, but ultimately what it boils down to is we're doing what are called adjustments to improve the range of motion of your spine. And so if you look at this here, this is just a plastic model that I use to show people what I mean by this. Imagine these are the individual vertebrae of your spine. And when a person bends forward, notice how each of the vertebrae have movement. You see how that works? Okay, so this person right here is able to move their spine. Now, let me show you this red spot. This red spot represents a problem. When a person tries to bend, each of the vertebrae should have movement. So when they try to bend forward, they bend forward. But notice how the red spot, it actually is very, very stiff. It doesn't move at all. They try to bend backwards, and these three vertebrae are very, very stiff. The problem with this is that the individual vertebrae, because they're not moving, the nutrients in the disc are not going to be coming in and out. So then the disc starts to become unhealthy and starts to decay. The other thing that occurs is because these aren't moving well, these areas right above and below, by the way, will try to move excessively to try to make up the difference, because we do want to turn our head, we do want to bend our neck to the side and do those things. So you start to get decay right here where you get an early stage arthritis. And this is the reason why this type of problem is so bad. People will call this a misalignment, but that's a little bit of an oversimplification because the bone isn't over here and we snap it back over there. It's not that it pops out or in, but even though people use those terms, what we're actually doing with an adjustment is we're improving the range of motion. So if I were to adjust with my hands properly, and this is not just randomly cracking the spine, we're actually adjusting the spine, getting range of motion in these particular areas, as if by magic, watch what happens. Suddenly the person bends forward, and now that red spot has movement in it. And so they bend and they go, oh my gosh, I can feel movement in that area. The benefit of that is now the disc will get its nutrients in there. So for disc problems, this is very valuable. And what we've done is we've stopped or slowed down the decay that's occurring above and below, which is usually what people come in with. So step one is figuring out what movements are causing pain and eliminating those and replacing them with good movement. The second thing is to do adjustments to improve that range of motion so all the vertebrae have proper movement. And the third and final thing, and I'll tell you what I'm omitting here on purpose, because you're probably thinking that this is going to be number 3, but it's not, is to strength train the actual muscles of the back. Now, people usually go, you mean your core? That's not what I mean. When people say the word core, very often they're thinking of their six-pack, the muscles in the front of their spine. I'm talking about the actual back muscles of the back, the ones that are next to the actual spine. A lot of research has shown that strengthening the back muscles is the best, most effective way to reduce back pain and keep back pain away. Yet, on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, everybody's telling you you need to strengthen your abdomen. For some people, the abdomen is literally 10 inches away from their back. Some people, it's 2 feet away from their back. So you don't want to be strengthening your abdomen, you want to be strengthening your back muscles. And this is the hardest thing to deal with because every patient thinks they need to do crunches and sit-ups, and very often it doesn't seem to be working. The thing that works the best is strengthening the back muscles. So certain types of exercises such as deadlifts, Supermans, bird dogs, those types of exercises are actually beneficial, and by teaching people how to do those, very often you get a lot of good results with back pain. And notice I omitted stretching. Isn't that interesting? Because you would have thought that I would recommend yoga or some type of stretching. Stretching's fine if people like to do it, but in the particular case of stretching will not change the movement patterns that you're using. Stretching won't fix this. So those joints that are locked up and literally glued together, no matter how much this person tries to stretch, they can never stretch out this part. They're only just further stretching this. And that's why a lot of times people will come in and say, I've been stretching for 6 months and it just doesn't seem to help my back pain. The other thing is the research shows that the stretching, while some people it may help, the majority of the people actually need strengthening of their back muscles. So it's really a numbers game. Occasionally you'll get a patient where stretching will help, but 9 out of 10 times, stretching really doesn't have that much of an effect. The second thing that you're probably maybe surprised that I didn't say anything about was someone's weight. A lot of times people come in and they're not 10 pounds overweight or even 20 pounds overweight. They're 80 pounds overweight. They're 150 pounds overweight. A lot of big people. And you would think that, well, if they just lost the weight, then they would not have back pain. And that is partially not true. And what I mean by that is usually weight does not cause pain. Usually weight aggravates pain. So if you have a bad movement pattern, if you have joints that are not working well and weak back muscles, adding 100 pounds to your frame, particularly right in front of your gut, that's not going to be helpful. However, some people will go on extreme diets where they basically just stop eating certain meals and they stop eating certain food groups and they just don't drink water and they only eat once a day, and they do lose a lot of weight, but their back pain stays with them because all those movement patterns and joint limitations and weaknesses stay with them. So weight doesn't really play as much of a role as we think. And in the scientific literature, it really doesn't point at weight as a big factor. A lot of times it's easy to blame people because if someone comes in and they're 350 pounds, it would be easy to say, well, of course you have back pain, you're 350 pounds. But that isn't always true, because what do you tell the patient that's 140 pounds? It's not fair. But the truth is, in my practice, and I've been doing this for 28 years, you'll get just as many people that are big with back pain as you will that are thin with back pain. So the size of the patient doesn't seem to matter that much. If you thought this video was helpful, let me know. If you have any questions, you're free to ask in the comment section, and I'd be happy to answer those questions.